stage. The next piece is by American composer David Maslanka. I was fortunate to meet him purely by chance. I don't remember the context of it, but myself and my singer companion in my professional group were performing, I think it was at the New York Museum of Art, New York City Museum, not the big Met. And I was doing David Maslanka's My Lady White, and unbeknownst to me, he was attending a concert in the area and got wind that one of his pieces was being played, so he suddenly appeared in the audience, much to my dismay. But he came up afterwards and was very kind, and we talked a while. I asked him if he had any percussion ensemble pieces, and he told me about a piece that had been done once called Arcadia 2, which was written for a person who was the best marimbist in the world at the time, Lee Howard Stevens, and had been done by Central Michigan University and hadn't kind of been done since. And this was in the early 90s. We had a person named Stefan Harris in our youth group, who some of you may have heard his name. He's been up for Grammys 5 times. He's a jazz vibe player and an incredible person and player. And so the long story is, the short and part of it is, he sent me a copy of the score and the parts, and we performed it. He came to the performance and was just amazed that anybody, any high school kids could actually play it. About 2 years ago, William played the piece and actually played it better than Stefan did, so speaks a lot for William. David wrote a number of marimba pieces and then a whole bunch of concertos and some orchestra pieces and choral music, a very prolific composer, a very tonal style, unusual for 21st century composers, but with his own 20th century twist on it. One of these pieces is Variations on Lost Love. It's a very difficult piece, and all of his marimba solos and Arcadia, he did in conjunction with Lee Stevens. So Lee told him what was possible on the instrument and what wasn't quite possible and the different things you can do. And since Lee was very good, it made these pieces very hard. Variations on Lost Love is a very complex piece. I'm going to let William talk about it in a second. I just want to show you 2 special techniques that David is using in this piece. One involves different kinds of marimba rolls. Marimba, of course, is not a sustaining instrument. Just hit a note for a second. So it sustains for a little bit of time and then it's gone. So if we want to sustain, we have to do what they call roll, which means repeatedly strike the bar, and you're trying to convince yourself that it's really a solid tone. Just play a 2-mallet roll. That's the way we sustain. So there are 3 different kinds of rolls in this piece. One is the so-called traditional roll. Then we have what Lee calls the double lateral roll. And finally, there's the multiple independent roll, where each hand is rolling separately. So William, what do you do differently on each of these?
So in the standard roll, both my left and right hand, the mallets will be coming down at the same time, but they will be alternating. In the double lateral roll, the hands are still alternating, but you can see that the mallets are not quite coming down at the same time. And then finally in the independent roll, both hands are rolling at the same time, and it's like each hand is doing their own roll, so it's like 2 one-handed rolls in each hand.
One more special effect that Lee was always high on, and that is where you strike the instrument on the bars. So just play, beginning of that section, but play it in the normal part on the bar. Okay? And then later on, he asks to play it on the nose. That's the place where these strings are, it's the dead part on the bar, and it gives you a very ghostly kind of effect. And eventually has the person move more toward the center of the conventional thing. So there's a lot of weird things you can do on marimba, and the ones that were musical, Maslanka adopted in this piece. William, if you have a thing to say about this, and then put the mic back down.
All right. The title of this piece, of course, is Variations on Lost Love, and in my interpretation of this piece, I use that title to symbolize the different sections. As implied from the title, variations, you would think it is a theme in variations, which is a melody at the beginning, and then a set of variations that slightly shift the theme in different ways. But this one is a little bit stranger, as there is a theme in the beginning, there is a melody, but then after that are three pretty big and lengthy sections that are very different from one another. The first is very slow and subtle. It's very introspective, and I think this first part might represent the first feelings that this person might feel when they may lose a loved one, as the title implies, lost love. And then the second part of the piece is much more energetic. And I think this might be them trying to cope or battle with their emotions. And the second part reaches a big climax as well, where I'm going to be, as we talked about before, I'm going to have those independent rolls in the right hand and these very stately chords in the left. And then in the third part, it's almost like the person might be even like reaching a point of insanity, because it's just such a chaotic third part to the piece. But even after all this chaos that he writes in the third part, it ends very, very quiet and even somewhat peaceful. And I think this kind of represents a sort of acceptance at the end. So overall, I think it's an extremely complex piece, but it has so much diversity, and there's many parts that are melodic and others are much more atonal. With that being said, I hope you enjoy Maslanka, Variations on Lost Love.